Hello all and welcome to the official FanTeam podcast brought to you by FanTeam, the biggest daily fantasy site in Europe. My name is Andrew and today I'm joined once again by injury analyst and fantasy football expert Ben Dinnery. Good afternoon, Ben. How's it going?
Good afternoon, Andrew. Yeah, mate, it's good to be back. Looking forward to seeing, Premier League football back in action and, of course, back on the FanTeam trail. Hopefully following up from some good results back in what seems like a lifetime ago in Gameweek 29.
It seems to be a really long international break. How did you get on in Gameweek 28 and 29, Ben? Did you cast hold of its luck?
I did. I had my best return of the season in 29. So, yeah, very pleased. Hoping that's a sign of things to come. Spent the last sort of 10 days looking at the data for the season running, the business end of the campaign. So if those data trends stay in place, then I might be heading into the Euros with some pockets full of cash.
There's a pockets full of Euros. Excellent stuff. Are there any breaking Premier League injuries we should be aware of? Just so I have a note, we're recording on Thursday afternoon, and Ben is the main man when it comes to Premier League injuries.
So great news. We've just had Brendan Rodgers' press conference. So this is literally just, hot off the press, as it were. James Madison is fit and available. He's training pain-free. There was an issue in the tendon in and around his hip where he had surgery, in the close season. Last year, they've just sort of hampered his campaign this year, but he's been back, he's training well, although Brendan Rodgers does admit that obviously he's not 100% match fit. So whether that means, Madison will be in a position to start or not remains to be seen. Elsewhere, I mean, there'll be a lot of interest in Leeds United players, and one of those being Patrick Bamford.
Absolutely.
Of course, they're playing Sheffield United this weekend, which is a very appealing fixture. And again, great news on that front. It was a problem that Bamford carried for most of the game against Fulham. There was no tear in that muscle. It was mainly impact, a little bit of fatigue. But Marcelo Bielsa's come out and he said, we've got a pretty healthy, fit squad going into that game. So, there's two sort of really positive updates. Unsurprisingly for me, sharing some good news for a change.
Indeed, I'm really pleased because the latter as well is at the moment my captaincy's on him for this game week 30 monitor. We'll take a look. I'll see you a little bit later. Have you got anything for us, Ben, on Heung-min Son? Because obviously it was a bit mysterious, and we haven't heard much over the break, have we?
We haven't, no, and that's a difficulty with regards to this international break. Players are given a little bit of time off. They will go and recuperate, particularly given, the rigours of what we've had so far this term. He was omitted from the national team squad against a friendly, I think it was against Japan, to focus on that recovery. We haven't, so we're reading between the lines here. And what I would say is what we know about Heung-min Son, he has very good powers of recovery. Typically when he's picked up issues in the past, he responds really, really well to treatment and he does come back. On the flip side to that, there are those that have been scouring the internet and scouring through the Tottenham Hotspur training photographs and notice that Heung-min Son hasn't been a part of those. However, I would always, urge people to treat those, images in isolation. Don't see too much from them. It's just a mere snapshot in time. And they're also, today, Friday, and even Saturday, for players to get back involved with the squad. You don't know what else is going on behind the scenes. My own particular feelings were that Son would be in a good position to potentially return this weekend. But with hamstring injuries in particular, they do have high re-injury and recurrence rates. So if there are any doubts whatsoever, then they will be sort of pulled to one side and maybe not risk. So it's one of those ones. I would have been a lot happier if I had seen him out there on the grass.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm still remaining cautiously optimistic, shall I say, that Son will, be included in the matchday squad. Although, as a Newcastle supporter, it's not something that I would particularly want to see in this weekend's squad.
Thank you so much, Ben. Really, really good updates there, and suits my my fantasy teams, what you gave then as well. So I'm quite pleased with that. So for our YouTube watchers, please remember to click the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen if you haven't subscribed already. Remember to press the like button if you enjoy our content. So let's take a look. As you say, it seems like an absolute lifetime ago, Ben. So this was from Game Week 28, which was the last sort of weekly monster which we recorded. And what we've got on screen now is the team that actually won the Game Week 28 weekly monster and scooped an amazing £6,750. I'll run through it quickly. It scored 109.5 points. It had Guaita in goals, Alexander-Arnold, Dunk and Riedewald at the back, Mane, Gross, Tielemans and Trossard in midfield, Vardy, Iheanacho captain and Jota up front. And the first thing that strikes me, Ben, which is very, very rare, but every single player made a contribution, because normally there's one or two players who don't normally. But what are your kind of, observations on that winning team?
I think first and foremost, you look at that and on paper, when you're scribbling down your squads ahead of any particular game week, you will highlight and look at those players who you maybe stand a good chance of returning. Whether that the reality of the situation, that doesn't always come to fruition. But on this occasion, they obviously did. I think, the Brighton triple up, for me, I think I made a tripled up on Brighton defence.
Yeah.
So I went Sanchez, Dunk, and I think Veltman was the other one, because that looked at the shoe-in, given the issues with Newcastle are having, particularly in attack as well, and the confidence. And as soon as Brighton got that goal, you just see Newcastle sort of capitulate. So that was that was a good standout one, and that was a nice one. But the Iheanacho, the hat-trick, and it was almost like the perfect storm. There had been rumours and talk about the Chris Wilder departure. And that had a huge impact on the dressing room. And even Paul Higginbottom came out and he said, look, the players are devastated. It's almost like a death in the family, not having Chris Wilder there. And, they didn't have a long time to sort of process that information. I think for me, I went the other way. I went with Vardy. And, I was happy with a 13-point return, but obviously the punt on Iheanacho, which in hindsight, given his form and given, what he's producing and grasped, that opportunity in the absence of some of those Leicester players, that was a really sort of outstanding pick.
Yeah, it seems like as well, this player, this winner, specifically targeted 4 teams. So we had triple Leicester, triple Brighton, triple Liverpool and double Palace. So, that strategy, as we discussed over the weeks, is clearly, the way to go. If you want to hit those heights, of attempting to win the whole thing. Yeah, but some really, really interesting observations there, Ben. Thank you. So our feature tournament for this podcast and video is the Game Week 30 Weekly Monster, which has a prize pool this week of a massive £67,500. And we'll be running through the game week's applicable fixtures and sharing our entries with you. So our watchers and listeners are aware what the weekly monster is if you haven't played already. It is very, very similar to the free hit chip in Fantasy Premier League, where you basically pick the best 11 players for the game week that you think will score the most points. A very brief rundown. You build a squad of 11 players. It must include at least 1 goalkeeper, 3 defenders, 2 midfielders, and 1 forward. You can select up to a maximum of 3 players from any one Premier League team. You have a budget of £105 million to build your 11-man team, and you can make unlimited changes to your team until the first eligible match kicks off, which is Saturday, April the 3rd at 3 o'clock GMT. You pick a captain and vice-captain. Your captain scores double points, and if he doesn't start, your vice does, so exactly the same as FPL there. Safety net applies as well, which means if one of your players doesn't start, they will be replaced by a cheaper player from the same club and position, and player prices do not change. Really, really simple. And lots and lots of people this season have really jumped on and embraced this these weekly monsters. They are so much fun, and obviously with the with the opportunity of winning lots and lots of cash as well. There's plenty of people who we've been talking to have. So for those watching now on YouTube, the point scoring matrix is on screen. As you can see, it's very similar to the season-long FanTeam game and indeed the main FPL game. So again, if you've never played before, Very, very easy to pick up. Ben, can I just ask, with, a lot of the bigger teams now, Man United, Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, sadly, not Spurs being a fan, obviously not Newcastle, but with all these teams now playing in Europe, from a fantasy perspective, do you expect much rotation now, over the coming weeks? Who are the teams you expect to rotate, and the teams maybe who'll play a similar team on all fronts?
Difficult to say, but I certainly think there will be priorities will shift during this period.
Yeah.
During this international break, we haven't sat back and, twiddled our thumbs. We've actually been looking at the data, from previous seasons about how teams may be rotated and starting lineups change. So inherently what we're looking at in terms of rotation, typically from game weeks 1 to 29, we will have around about maybe 42 to 44 changes across the league generally. As we approach this run-in period, that then rises, to maybe 47, 48. But there are instances, single game weeks, which need to be put into context around European fixtures and stuff. We have seen that high as 54 and 56 rotations. So that's massive. Some of the teams that we highlighted during this period, of course, Manchester City. The worst thing in terms of a fantasy manager is Pep having a full squad at his disposal.
Absolutely.
I think we've seen in maybe the 2 or 3 game weeks up to including, just prior to this shutdown, the last 3 games, Premier League game to Premier League game, there was 17 changes for Manchester City. So pick the bones out of that. Good luck going forward, which is a shame because the data would tends to lead us down the track that in terms of outputs for teams in those top 2 positions, i.e. City and United, those are the teams that will continue to perform against their current season average and more often than not will surpass that. So that's, it's a bit of if you want to take a bit of a gamble, you have got the safety net in there with obviously on FanTeam's. So, if you see value in that City team, I would suggest, you should plumb for that. Arsenal are going to be the ones for me where it could be that Mikel Arteta, at what point does he say, the league's out of it now, it's out of reach, we need to move all of our focus onto the Europa, and winning that Europa League takes them into the Champions League. So there's a huge carrot at the end of that for them. So they would be the main ones as well. But you look at each individual game week, you look at the team in context in terms of their availability and squad, and you cut your cloth accordingly because it is a difficult period of the season, and the data will, backs that up.
I was not expecting such a precise numerical answer there, Ben. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. So there are 3 full round weekly monster tournaments every game week. This one has a prize pool of £11,250 with a guaranteed first prize of £1,350, which you can enter for as little as £1.80, cheapest chips. For this week, there's also a free entry to this competition for new FanTeam users. So if you do fancy seeing what all the fuss is about over at FanTeam, go to fanteam.com, register and play that tournament for free with a chance of winning £1,350 first prize. And of course, lots of prizes all the way down the leaderboard as well. There is a high roller tournament if you want to play for big money too, but our featured tournament for this podcast, the €67,500 prize pool game with a guaranteed first prize of £6,750 first prize for just an £18 entry. As we're coming out of lockdown, Ben, that money could come in handy in the summer, over the Euros.
That type of money could come in handy, at any time it wants to come. It could come in handy.
Well, when the general won his money, he spent his $5,000 on a back door. So I really, really hope that if I win something, I spend it on something a little bit more exciting. But,
the trick to it is, Andrew, is not to divulge too much to the other half.
I'm learning this off you, Ben. I am.
Yeah, and look, we can go out. It's get rid of the back doors. You get rid of the front doors. It's Las Vegas. Here we come.
I'm your protege, Ben, when it comes to all this stuff. The teams we pick can be used across all monster tournaments this weekend. Just a reminder to enter all fan team contests. You must be over 18 and be gambleaware.org. Well, this week we have 9 Premier League fixtures applicable for this contest. Starting with Leeds versus Sheffield United, the one you mentioned earlier. And just quickly looking at the player prices, the Leeds boys are right at the top this week. They're the real premium assets this week. Leicester play Man City in what I think should be a fantastic contest. I think it's so hard to call that one. And then we have Arsenal and Liverpool, again a really tough game to call there. Moving on to Sunday the 4th of April, Southampton against Burnley. Newcastle play Spurs, so it's your team against my team there, Ben. I'll be an interesting one. Villa play Fulham and Man United play Brighton in the evening. And then on Monday evening, Everton host Crystal Palace before Wolves entertain West Ham. So what stands out for you there, Ben? Which fixtures are you going to be targeting this weekend?
Truth be told, this is the hardest game week I have encountered since I played FanTeam, in my opinion.
You say that every week, Ben.
Yeah, but this time I really, really mean it. I sat down. I can normally scribble down 5 or 6 names without even thinking. After 10 minutes, of actually just looking, bearing in mind I'm working in it every day, so I have a good feeling and understanding.
Yeah,
I had 3 names down on a piece of paper and I was stuck. I was stuck. I mean, the obvious ones, we look at Leeds. I think Leeds, Sheffield United, that would be a standout fixture. And then elsewhere, Everton. Everton is the other one. And I'm going back to the research that I've done during the break. And in terms of, not only does it look appealing on paper, but the data will back up that the likes of the Sheffield Uniteds and the West Bromwich Albions of this world will continue to struggle. There is very little to suggest in the data that even though there's still mathematically they may have a chance of survival, you see very little. I think there's only one team in the last 4 to 5 years who have surpassed their previous points per game ratio in this running from the bottom 2, and that was West Brom, funny enough, a few years back, but they still went down. Leeds, they're always going to bomb forward. They're always playing on the front foot. So, I like the look of them. And Everton, they're in that 7th, 8th, 9th area is the one where you see typically the teams are more susceptible to a downturn in form. However, I think Carlo Ancelotti's men will slightly buck that trend, because I really think they feel like they've got a chance of getting into Europe, the Europa League. So this is a big time, and obviously the return of James Rodriguez will be big for them.
Fantastic. There are some hard games. One time, obviously, Leeds and Sheffield United. So Sheffield United lost 5-0, I want to say, to Leicester, obviously, when Iheanacho scored a few and Vardy got a few assists in that one. So, you got to fancy Leeds. Leeds also scored 2 away to Fulham, I think, in the last game as well, which is no mean feat for Fulham, who have improved massively defensively. So Leeds definitely won. I think Villa and Fulham, so as I just mentioned, Fulham conceded a couple of goals to Leeds. Grealish could be back, we hope, which will give them, both probably, a bit of a physical and mental boost. You would think Villa, who have been poor in recent weeks. Spurs Newcastle, I mean, if you just look at it objectively, I think Newcastle may have Wilson and maybe some Maximan potentially back, kind of in around the squad, but that doesn't take away from the fact really that even if they are back in the team, they're going to take a little while to get up to speed. A lot of Spurs players have done well abroad now, in internationals, including Kane himself. Lucas Moura seems to be coming into his own in his last month. He's put in some superb performances for Spurs, but I do think a lot of it will depend on Son and Bale, and kind of whether they're fit or not. Because if they're not, I think Spurs will still win, but I think it could be, quite a, like a 1-0 or something. But I do think if Son and Bale are there and they start with that three-pronged attack. It could be a couple more. And as you mentioned, Everton and Palace. I do still think that West Ham are going under radar a little bit as well. I know they had a poor performance against Man United the other week, but I think apart from that, they've been playing really, really well. I mentioned in Man United, obviously they're at home to Brighton. I think Bruno's only had one return in his last 4, so he hasn't been on fire. But Brighton are a funny old team because they defy all the stats and all the odds, don't they? And they're capable of an upset as well. So yeah, I do agree with you. I picked my team a bit quicker than you. I think I managed to kind of rattle through it. But yeah, we will. While we're on that, let's get your team on screen, Ben. So do you want to run through it for our podcast listeners and talk us through your team?
Yeah, slightly different formation from me. Typically, I like to go with a 4, sometimes even a 5 at the back and get those budget defenders in that lineup. I just didn't see the value this week, and I really, really struggled, like I say. And I've took a little bit of a punt. Look, I'm going to get it out of the way. I'm just going to say, I'm just going to say, look, I've got Kieran Clark in there. And do you know what? I'm not even 100% sure whether he'll start, but I have got that safety net, and the 2 defenders below him, would be included. I'm hoping that there's a set piece opportunity for Newcastle on that front. And look, to give context here, it's I'm looking elsewhere in the team, and I'm really scraping the barrel.
Do you know what? I'm so glad you said that, and you didn't try to back it up with any kind of, anything else other than you've just stuck him in so you can spend your money on the other 10. I think that's fair enough.
Look, I mean, I know what you're saying about Tottenham. I just don't feel there's value in. I think they should win, but I think it will be tight.
Yeah, I do.
And when I'm looking at the prices this week for Tottenham players, I just don't feel that there's a value there. So I've opted against Tottenham and stuck. Clark is a little bit of an enabler, and he does get the odd goal. So hopefully he does start. So that's not great. Luke Shaw. I'm not fooled by Brighton's performance against Newcastle. There are still question marks over Graham Potter, and if local media reports are to be believed, then his job could be on the line. So yeah, look, I think he's full of confidence. He certainly wasn't in the England starting 11 midweek. I'm not sure if he came on as a sub, but I know Ben Chilwell came in for him on the left-hand side. So he should be fully refreshed, full of confidence. And United are a team that I would expect, again, to go and get a result. They're up, the top 2 on merit. They're grinding out results, and I would expect that level of performance to continue, really. The only concern that I have with this particular game week is when you have teams who've had a lot of players away on international duty, and maybe those who are playing, particularly if they're playing on a Saturday, you're not getting players back till sometimes Friday. They need to be assessed. They're not having any training involvement. So it can be sort of difficult to maybe have that fluidity. Or managers may just say, well, look, we're going to put you on the bench. But hoping that, with the United game being a little bit sort of further into the game week, that they should have that recovery and should be okay. I've went for Aston Villa, and I went with Matty Cash. And this, again, it's going to be a tough game for me against Fulham. Villa have been pretty poor of late. But as you touched upon, the return of their talisman, Jack Grealish, he's been back on the training pitches, so we fully expect him, to be back in the starting 11. Whether he's 100% match fit or not, he's high status, he's highest profile. He's the skipper. He's the guy that carries that Villa team, and I think Dean Smith will throw him back in. That'll give everybody a lift. And Matty Cash is again. He's another fullback that's always playing on the front foot. This could be a really tight game, a nils each or a 1-0 maybe to Villa for me. So I'm looking for, first and foremost, maybe a clean sheet point. But, if he does venture forward, then potentially we've got something with regards to an offensive return. And in goal, it's another gamble on it. And I'm not one I'm confident with at this moment in time. And I've went with Fabianski at Molineux against Wolves. Couple of reasons. I like to have involvement on a Monday night.
Yeah, it's important, I think.
That's what carried me through in Gameweek 29. Liverpool at Molineux as well against Wolves, and I had tripled up on Liverpool. So I had points coming all over the pitch, which was great.
Yeah.
Wolves have disappointed me this season. All of the talk, pre-week one was there's no European distractions. If they can play 3 times a week and do all that travel and still perform well, what are they going to do when they can focus just on the Premier League? Well, the answer is not a great deal.
Not a lot. They sold a lot of their good players, and then obviously really enforced what happened to Jimenez. But even before his injury, they weren't up to much, were they?
Yeah, and it's primarily the reason I went for Fabianski is because William Jose hasn't been pulling up any trees. I think Fabio Silva, he's still learning his craft. He's a young lad. The standout performer, I think, for Wolves this season, without any question, would be Pedro Neto. He's been delivering on most weeks, but again, we need to understand that he's still a very, very young player. There are going to be, levels of inconsistency. You need Adama Traore to really stand up with Pete County.
Just gone, haven't he, off the radar since his last season before? He was just, he was all the talk, wasn't he?
He was on fire. And you go through that, and you're talking about somebody who is yet to return a goal or an assist, which is shocking, really. It's unforgivable. That so. While Wolves could get a result, I'm plumbing for West Ham to continue that momentum and keep it tight, and hopefully Craig Dawson won't score another own goal. So we go with Fabianski. I went with 4 in midfield, so it's a 3-4-3. And again, look, I'm just holding I'm putting my hand on my heart here. I'm not confident at all this week. I'm not. If I go to sleep tonight and I wake up tomorrow, I'm hoping for divine intervention. But Raphinha, Leeds, we've touched upon that. I don't think it will be the demolition job that maybe everybody's expecting. Sheffield United, very good against Chelsea in the FA Cup. Maybe a little bit unfortunate. If McGoldrick had scored that open goal, that changes the complexion and maybe just gives them a little bit of a confidence in. But that's been their problem all season. So I do expect Leeds to get a result, maybe 2, possibly 3, and Raphinha, will never be far away from Leeds attacking returns. Sticking with West Ham, and I'm just purely plumbing for Souček, given the fact that he should be return to West Ham full of confidence after his hat-trick on international duty. So getting 3 goals on a big stage will always help. Again, so we're talking about a team who is potentially pushing for European qualification spots. They've got it all to play for, really, where Wolves are maybe treading a little bit of water. They're not going to get into those top places. They're not going to get, relegated. So maybe it's time for Nuno to look ahead to next season already. And, subconsciously, some of those players may already be on the beach or the equivalent of a beach with those travel restrictions this year. Who knows? The back garden. My 4th one, not a pick that I would typically enjoy, but James Rodriguez. And the reason I don't like this is because he's obviously coming back from injury. Yeah. He's missed a lot of football. So there will be question marks with regards to his sharpness. What does work in his favour, he's had 2 weeks on the training ground. He returned with the group early on in that break. So he's had a good amount of work in his legs. There would have been a bounce game arranged in that. And, his quality can't be understated. And if we see the James Rodriguez that lit the Premier League up on his arrival during those first maybe 4, 5, 6 games, then potentially you've got some great returns against a Crystal Palace team which don't instill me with any confidence whatsoever. We've heard from Roy Hodgson today. They're not really expecting any major returners. potentially Tyreek Mitchell is the only one. So they've still got maybe 6 or 7 players definitely, ruled out of this game. And there's two things again which Roy Hodgson mentioned, which stuck to my mind. One is I had been looking at the data for Roy Hodgson, and typically we look at Roy Hodgson teams, regardless of what league he's played at, in what country. If you were to aggregate all of his league finishes and his points total, there's some kind of anomaly where he always finishes within 5 points of his average.
Oh.
And I think his average is around about sort of 43 to 44 points. Now, all well and good. I think Palace are currently on 37 points, if I'm right. Hodgson's already said today, he's come out with 9 games remaining saying, it's time to take the foot off the gas. It's the pressure's gone now. It will maybe be a little bit more expansive, a little bit more open, and we maybe just enjoy our football a little bit more. That tells me that there may be some more risks in terms of rotation, maybe involving some of those fringe players, and it could just open the door for somebody like Everton, who, like I say, are pushing for European places to really go and do a job on them. and the fourth one, again, it's another punt.
You laugh a bit more after every pick.
Yeah, like I'm not really sure what I was. I think I must have been sniffing glue when I picked these. but I like is it's Miguel Almiron. I think it will be a tight game, and we know that Callum Wilson is likely to be back in that starting 11. I'm not so sure about Alan Saint-Maxim. Miguel Almiron did return before the break. He's had 2 good weeks under his belt. He was in great form, before his little setback, a knee injury. So if Newcastle, and it's a backs against the walls performance. We know confidence is fragile up there at St James's Park. We know that Steve Bruce is hanging on there, with the skin of his teeth. If we could get the first goal, it gives us something to hold on to. Maybe an Almiron cross for Kieran Clark, then it will be happy days.
If that happens, mate, you will win the Gameweek 30 monster, 100%.
I mean, if Harry Kane was to open the scoring, then it's going to be very, very difficult for Newcastle. So I'll be watching the team news for that one. We've got press conferences, obviously, on Friday to follow. But there's Almiron's in there for this moment in time. And finally, me fun 3. 2 players who have already, outlined the rationale behind those selections. Patrick Bamford, Rafinha, Bamford.
Yep.
You don't really need much context there. Yeah. Everton. But I plumbed, instead of going for maybe Calvert-Lewin, I went for Richarlison. Again, there's not much between the two. Richarlison has been in decent form of late. He's also had a good rest over the break, and I've actually got the armband on him as it currently stands. Like I say, I do see the appeal of Everton. In the final selection, maybe a little bit punty, but again, this is based around team news, would be Edison Cavani. Not convinced by Brighton in any way, shape or form. Ollie really needs to stamp home his authority during this run-in, particularly at Old Trafford. We have Marcus Rashford, who hasn't been involved in any of the training or the games for England due to an impact injury on his foot. So there are question marks with regards to that. Anthony Martial, now he missed France's last game on Wednesday after picking up a knee injury as well. And we also see Mason Greenwood return from the under-21s. Now, Mason Greenwood, I don't think is anything major. It's nothing significant, so he should be involved. But the question marks regarding will Cavani start or not on a typical game week, I think, have been sort of circumvented by the injury news in and around that United team, who I would expect, to put in a decent performance. And if he's spearheading that attack, then, there's an opportunity for him maybe to get hopefully a goal or 2.
Fantastic,
and there we go.
No, that's a really, it's a very typical kind of fan team monster team, right? It's a team full of punts, but obviously punts in terms of they're the kind of ones who win you, right? So if we look back to game week 28, Iheanacho captaincy, triple Brighton, etc., etc. They're the kind of ones who win it for you. So I like your style. Moving
I
on to
like your
my
style, but not your players.
no, moving on to my team. Mine's probably a bit more of a traditional sort of team.
Template
team. I've gone for Dubravka in goals. Obviously,
question mark
straight away.
because I think Darlow could. But you've got your safety net there, so
yeah,
I think
I'll check who's the higher price, and I'll go if it's Darlow. I'll go for Darlow. Yeah, I've got a bit of change in the bank, but I was gone for them. It's it's the way I tend to play. In this game is just to spend as cheap as I can on a keeper because they're usually good for save points. So even and generally I tend to come away with, around 2.5 points off my keeper every week. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but I'll take that for 5.8 million. In defence, then I've gone for Shaw, same as yourself, for all the same reasons. I won't go over the rationale there. Now I've gone for 2 picks. I've gone for Craig Dawson of West Ham. Obviously, as you said, hope he doesn't go scoring any own goals. But I am hopeful of something at the other end because he's been in fine goal scoring form. He just steams in off those corners, then he just chucks it, cannonball-esque, chucks himself for everything, and and also West Ham defensively, I think are underrated. I think they've had a fabulous season. I think they're a really, really good team. So I think Dawson 7 million is good value with that potential attacking upside then as well. I've gone for Stuart Dallas in defence, who this week is the highest priced defender, but I think for good reason. I do think Leeds will keep a clean sheet, but with Dallas playing in centre midfield, I think there's always a chance for an attacking return there. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm tempted to captain him in FPL and in my fan team season long. A bit of a punt, but I do think there's a fair bit of upside with Dallas. So I know he's expensive. 10.2, with those multiple ways of scoring points, I think that Dallas is a really good shout this week. Moving into midfield, so instead of Cavani, I've gone for the slightly more reliable Bruno Fernandes. He's quite expensive, 12.5 million. As we mentioned earlier, only one return in his last 4. But if we remember early on in the season, he scored that goal against Brighton, that winning goal after the full-time whistle had gone, if you remember. So they scored 3 away against Brighton. He only needs a penalty, right? He's kind of one of those players. So I agree with you. Even though Brighton comfortably beat Newcastle, I don't think at the moment that's a really tough feat. So I expect United, as you say, go win that one and have Bruno involved. I've gone for the in-form Jesse Lingard for West Ham as well, with nothing more that he's just on the crest of a wave. He's absolutely on the crest of a wave. Wolves haven't looked, as we've mentioned, Wolves haven't looked very, very exciting at all. So happy going with Lingard. Bit of a punt for 9 million. James Ward-Prowse, Southampton home to Burnley. So he's 10 million. He's quite expensive, but Ward-Prowse's set piece delivery this season has been superb. He's on penalties when Ings away as well. So I've gone for him this week. And my cheapie in midfield, I've gone for Odegaard for Arsenal against Liverpool. I think he's a bit of a a bit of a different kind of pick in terms of, I think he's looked really, really good. He seems to be playing every league game for Arsenal at the moment. Liverpool defensively, haven't been good at all. So he's in there more for his price than anything, but allow me to spend a bit more cash up front. Then, firstly, I have gone for the cheap Iheanacho against Man City, which I know sounds balmy, but like I say, the form Leicester have been at 6.6 million. I think he's worth putting in there as a bit of a shunt, because my kind of thing is as well, is a lot of people will be going on Man City defence there. So if he destroys that clean sheet, I get the double kind of whammy then, of my opposing Man City defenders not scored anything, and my
of course he's against his former club, which is always that that extra incentive as well.
And and Leicester have been playing very, very well, and Iheanacho is really on form. So for 6.6 million, he's one of the cheapest players in the game this week. And you may say rightly that he's playing up front in a team on form. I think he scored 5. If you include the FA Cup, scored 5 in his last 2, and 2 of them were against Man United. What's not to like, right? Again, a form pick more than anything. And then the big 2, as far as I'm concerned, I've gone for Harry Kane against Newcastle. I know I can see why you didn't go for him, but I just think he's a class apart, right? I think he'll score a goal minimum, may get a bit more there, and I've got my captaincy on Patrick Bamford. So as we mentioned, we've mentioned the merits of Bamford. No need to kind of go over them anymore. But that's my team, and mine took a lot shorter than yours. I'm quite happy. I haven't massively targeted specific teams as such, but this team can it came to me quite quickly, just in terms of looking at individual players I fancy will do well this week. So that is my team for this week.
I do like the Iheanacho. You know what is that? You've got the old grey matter ticking over there, and I think
cheapest chips, mate, 6.6.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you've said, and I think almost when you have players who are in that good a form, you almost transcend fixtures. And certainly Manchester City are they're more than fallible at the back. They don't seem to be as tight and robust as they once were.
Their kind of underlying stats are pretty good, but when you watch them having Man City defenders, they can get past that back line. I think they, as you said, I think they are fallible, and Edison has had to claw him out of it a few times this season, I think.
And again, another factor for me is you've got the Dortmund game, midweek in the Champions League, and you just don't know who Pep's going to go with.
Yeah.
I think Diaz is probably the one that you would think is most likely to be nailed in that back line, and then really you can go with any of the others. So I think that chopping and changing as well just does have affected a little bit on the stability of that team. So it may be worth, like you say, the value at 6.6 by Nacho. Yeah, I like that. I really do like that.
I think between the two of us there, Ben, we can build a winning team between the two of us there, can't we? So finally, if you haven't seen it already, we have some incredible news to share with you. FanTeam are pushing the boundaries even further this summer than they already have. Record-breaking year on all aspects of fantasy football from FanTeam this season. We've got a £1 million Euro 2020 FanTeam fantasy competition with a completely life-changing £200,000 first prize. There are a couple of videos on this channel already to talk you through how it works, and you can sign up and start drafting your Gameweek 1 team right now. So what are you waiting for? Click on the link, start drafting your team. Great fun. Ben and I were joined by the FPL General earlier this week. We started drafting it. Our season, obviously very, very loose at this stage, but we will also be coming back before the competition starts to share our strategies and drafts and everything. So make sure you subscribe and make sure you draft your Gameweek 1 team now. £1 million prize pool for 4 weeks of fantasy football management. Absolutely unbelievable again from FanTeam. And Ben is very excited for this contest, and you've already spent the winnings in your head, Ben. Is that right?
Just don't tell the missus.
Don't tell the missus. I've got to learn.
Exactly. I mean, I hope she's not watching or listening in. I've got this one in the bag. I mean, I've done quite well because I won the Champions League one as well, and I'll admit I'm probably out of the season-long Premier League game, but I'm focusing on winning the remaining 9 monsters, the Champions League, and then the Euros, and that's me done.
Thank goodness Republic of Ireland haven't qualified. You don't have to pick Kieran Clark. That's all I've got to say. So that is it from us for this episode. All the links are below for all the games we have discussed today. And don't forget, this week there's also that free entry to the £11,250 tournament for new FanTeam users. So if you haven't registered for FanTeam, head to fanteam.com to register and play that tournament for free. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining me this week. We'll have you on again in a couple of weeks. Great to have you on. Great to have all your chat and your injury news. I always feel like I've got a slight advantage to everyone else when you get all this fresh off the press, and all our watchers and listeners here at FanTeam. You definitely have an advantage over the rest of the fantasy world, having Ben here telling you all that latest news. Remember that if you liked what you watched, please press the like button, and remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. If you're listening on a podcast, please rate the podcast, leave a comment, let us know how we're doing. That would be very much appreciated. So this podcast will be available as a video on the FanTeam YouTube channel and is available as an audio version on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. Just search for Official FanTeam Podcast. Our website is fanteam.com, and our Twitter handles are at FanTeamOfficial and at FanTeam_UK. Give us a follow for regular game updates and for entry giveaways for lots of other FanTeam competitions. We will be back next week, looking ahead to the Gameweek 31 Weekly Monster. And the very best of luck for Gameweek 30. Goodbye for now.